how can staging really make a difference between somebody renting one home over another?
I want something comfortable. I want good air. I want a wonderful view. And I know these are all things that some people may or may not have, but there are ways to create views, even if it's just using wonderful art in the house.
The stuff that appears in these houses are just cool.
Unlocking Saratoga's real estate secrets. Welcome to Selling Saratoga, a podcast about the real Saratoga real estate scene in one of the Northeast's hottest and fastest growing markets. Our listeners are going to gain expert insight on the best ways to make decisions about home improvement, investment, design, buying, selling, and everything in between.
I'm Helen Mastrion.
And I'm Noel McLaren. Together, Helen and I have the keys to your future in Saratoga real estate. On today's episode, we are going to discuss market trends, real estate horror stories. But first, today's podcast is going to continue our ever important conversation about short-term rentals in Saratoga and how it's growing and changing. We've brought staging expert and interior designer Lisa Bates here. She's going to show us about the best ways to prepare your home when you are going to rent it out for a short-term rental. Lisa, welcome. We're very excited to have you. Your work has been featured in Better Homes and Gardens, Country Living magazines, and on Netflix, just to name a few. Saratoga was already a hot spot for short-term rentals in the summer with the track. The Belmont will only boost homeowners' confidence to rent their homes. So to do so for the first time, we're going to need some guidance. Lisa, she is here to help us out with that. Lisa, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Lisa Bates. Who are you and why are you the ultimate expert on staging, especially when it comes to your rental home? You've done this quite a few times.
I have. I went to college here, and
Did you go to Skidmore?
I did. I went to Skidmore.
Oh,
Yeah. Girl, I'm not going to say when I graduated, but I graduated.
Is that what brought you here?
Yes.
Okay.
Graduated with an art degree that sort of tumbled into an architecture class and morphed into renovating houses and designing them and selling them and doing a lot of I always had to stage them to sell them because I would do it on my own. Sorry, Helen. But
What is it?
Lisa doesn't like realtors.
I don't know.
It's not that she
You don't
doesn't
like
like them.
I
It's
do.
that she
I do
doesn't
like
need
them. Actually,
'cause-
some of my really good friends are real estate agents, but I don't always call on them. I didn't have a need for that. I think the market's changed a little bit now.
Okay.
And Helen was a good reflection of that change and needing her for probably the last project I did, which was staged in a very simple, modern way, using mostly my Scandinavian background to keep things contemporary and clean. And, I have a less is more adage about doing things. So even when you're staging something to rent, short-term, long-term, any of those things it's important.
So how did you get into design? What made Lisa Bates the designer as opposed to Lisa Bates the artist or anything else?
I think it was probably the fact that I was renovating houses and needed to sell them. I would do the move in, live in the project for 2 years, and then sell it. I worked with builders and contractors and subcontractors, and when it was finished, I had to come up with a beautiful piece of property to sell.
Born out of necessity.
Yes.
I know Lisa from as a friend before I became an agent because the houses that Lisa Bates either renovated or built up or restored or lived in for a couple of years and then sold were kind of famous in the neighborhood in Saratoga because they were Lisa Bates' house. So her aesthetic is well known in the community.
What is the Lisa Bates aesthetic? What is a Lisa Bates house? What's your trademark?
Well, I think my trademark is best described as minimalist, simple, common with nature.
Wood.
White. Well, I use
Perfect.
very few materials. I like using this. Maybe I pick 3 or 4 materials and run that through the house. That's probably I would say my most important.
I feel like that theme has, kind of grown over the last decade. That's really ahead of your time to think very simple because
It sort of was. I don't want to,
brag.
Toot your own horn.
No.
Come on.
There were times when I did this kind of work and it wasn't current enough for the market. So
Wow.
I can name some examples of houses that I did, that I designed in this way, that are now very popular.
Well,
Right?
ahead of your
Like the
time
North Broadway
again.
house,
exactly.
the Swanner Lane house.
Right.
There are also houses that I've designed that are more historic. So I keep a palette that is consistent with a historic house. I don't ever try to stick a modern kitchen in an older house.
My point that I was going to say is we're looking for simpler things and for less chaos and less clutter. And that's why that simple design has become so popular, because life with COVID, just with everything going on in politics and in life, has become chaotic. So, yeah. We want our homes to be simple. We don't want to feel chaos in our homes. And so to your credit, that's a huge strength.
Well, and you, Lisa, has also taken very unusual homes. She redesigned Swanner Lane, was a furniture warehouse back in the, was it 70s? 60s?
Yeah, it was actually a barn that was a garage, a holding tank for trucks that picked up garbage.
Oh my God.
You literally made garbage into something beautiful.
Wow. Yeah.
Somebody's trash into a treasure.
I do have a small memory of going into that garage when I was at Skidmore looking for salvage stuff for a project for a 2D
God.
for a
Wow.
2D class I took, and his name was Ralph Ernst. I remember the owner's name, but that morphed into a more modern structure that someone else bought and created a furniture warehouse out of it.
Time now to talk about our market trends with Helen. This is a segment we do every single week where Helen brings up a current situation with our market. Helen, fill us in.
So it is springtime and more listings are coming on. So that is typically a springtime trend for people who are looking to buy a house to be in by the summertime.
Okay.
Rentals clearly are on the upswing because of track. Belmont, yes, I'm told that even waiting till the last minute, if you're not in it yet, it's not too late. Without a doubt, long-term rentals are still extremely popular in Saratoga Springs, and there's a lot of long-term rentals out there that have not gone yet. I think there's a cycle. Is it January to January? Is it June to June? But we're clearly coming up on it. So rental strong. Saratoga is a great market, still a seller's market, and plenty of agents around to help.
So simple is your trademark. It's your aesthetic. That's the Lisa Bates design aesthetic.
The stuff that appears in these houses are just cool.
I know a lot of this stuff you're probably going to hear about Lisa Bates' design and want to see it. Design is a very visual thing, right? So you can go to our YouTube channel if you want to see some of this stuff that we're talking about. Our YouTube channel is going to be located in our show notes. That's where you can find all of that. But anyway, Lisa, as you were saying, your trademark is the simplicity. What do you think got you ahead of your time when it comes to some of this stuff?
I believe my Scandinavian background. I have I'm first generation. My grandmother, my mother all brought very specific things on the boat when they came over.
Wow.
And they couldn't bring much with them. It was during the war. But I, growing up with a mother who was also very less is more, she would throw out, clothes that I loved and, junk around the house that was dear to all of us. So for some reason, I think that there's a part of that constitutes the need for me to not have any clutter, not have any extraneous.
If you are a maximalist like myself,
Yes.
but you want to be more of a minimalist, where do you start?
Well, I've had these moments with clients that hire me to help edit their homes for such things, and it's really tricky because people love their thing.
It's psychological.
Yes,
For me, anyway,
yes.
I know that.
It has happened many times where I want to take a picture and move it, and someone says, "No, but it's been there forever.
The picture has feelings.
Don't move that."
That's
so
me.
I have to be really careful if I'm doing it for someone, if I'm helping someone with their things. There's a therapeutic part of it that you have to really be careful how you say it and what you say when you're working with a client. When it's just me, obviously, there's, I don't have that issue, but it's a little tricky.
What is step one for someone who is struggling with simplifying in design?
Moving furniture and removing things. I know right away. I have an eye for this. I know right away I can go to a restaurant and have a problem with this too, because the restaurant is the restaurant, and I want to move that table or that piece of art is not right. So, rearranging the space is really the first thing. Getting rid of a lot of the items, not throwing them out, but just moving them somewhere else.
Okay.
Or if they have a storage room, there's always a storage room in a house that gets rented, right? Right. Sometimes these rentals are rentals. Sometimes they're people's homes and they're doing it, for a weekend, or they're doing it for a week. So there are different needs for different rentals.
Rentals is our main topic today, so I want to dive specifically into that. But again, you were in Saratoga Living, Simply Saratoga, but you've also have some national publications, right?
Yes, I do.
Flea Market Style, Better Homes, that's a house name, a household name,
Cottage
if you will.
Style was a Meredith magazine publication that spun off of House Beautiful. I also have this book that these photographs out of magazines that I appeared in were taken and put as a compilation. And this is one of the books I use, this farmhouse style. I have a lot of design books that I offer up clients who want ideas without me telling them. I give them homework and I say, leaf through there.
Is that Country Homes book? Home, Modern Farmhouse, and your work.
Country Home put this together. My work appears in that book.
Okay, perfect. So, and then Netflix. Let's talk about the Netflix show. What's the show called?
It's called Stay Here, and it was developed specifically for doing what we're talking about, creating spaces and making them into short-term rentals for income. And it showed all aspects of it. And it was done by Netflix to create this show that I think had 10 episodes with different 10 episodes, meaning, there was a carriage house in Hudson, which was the one I helped my son set up before the designers came in. After the designers left, there was a little shtick about selling the lamps in the house or selling all the furniture. So there were price tags on everything. So once everything started selling, I said to my son, I'm going to redesign this and replace this. So if you see that the show is still running, I'm pretty sure.
On Netflix.
2018, I think it came out. So there's some examples of a lot of my things were used as props. It was a cool project.
Again, this is why we had to have you on the show about staging your short-term rental, because your work was so celebrated that a Netflix show all about that said, we need Lisa Bates, our local designer from Saratoga. So, let's talk now about how you have helped people rent out their homes through staging. How can staging really make a difference between somebody renting one home over another?
I think, again, I'm going to fall back to the minimalist simplicity. I think you just need to know that in the photographs and in the reality, that you need to make it comfortable, you need to make it inviting, you need to make it
cozy,
bright, cozy. Most people, I think, are looking for similar things when they're renting.
What screams comfortable, cozy, inviting when you're looking at photos on Airbnb or, any kind of rental site?
Well, lighting is huge.
What kind of lighting?
Yes, what kind of lighting? It could be any of the overhead lighting, but wonderful lamps. I tend to use, and when I'm doing this for myself, I tend to use vintage found objects, and I will offer that to clients as well if they want or need something other than something they bought at Home Goods.
Do you ever buy things there?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't tell anybody. I do.
I found this in a barn. No, just kidding. It's from Home Goods, but we'll never tell.
So I think finding unusual things that are eye-catching to someone who's looking through, because you've got to remember when people are renting, they're looking at photographs and they're looking at these rental sites.
So something that becomes associated with that house as unique or makes it unique?
Yes,
Okay.
I think unique. And I think they're finding that the market's shifting a little bit with the formulaic. And I don't know that I can mention there's some HGTV shows or home decorating shows that have become very formulaic. It's really nice to add things that have historical merit or something personal and have meaning rather than just your formulaic. Put in a nice rug.
Cookie cutter.
Put in a yes.
Yeah.
So
We
that
don't
is
want cookie cutter.
becoming more of a, I would say, a desire of people to rent something. They're looking for something a little more unusual. I think the formulaic West Elm look is good, but I think people want more.
Do you recommend to people to hire a real photographer to do their photos for Airbnb and VRBO, et cetera? Or
if you have a budget, I do recommend that. And I actually have some photographers I work with that I, like that know what to focus on. You also need to know what to focus on when you're taking pictures. So if you're doing it yourself, you might not know that. And I've seen photographs that the angle's either wrong or they're not showing the highlight of the house, which could be the kitchen. Maybe there's a really cool kitchen that needs to be featured and focused on a little bit more.
Okay.
People do like kitchens. You asked me that earlier. I think one of the big reasons people rent houses rather than go to hotels or B&Bs is that there's a kitchen.
Yeah.
So they can cook, and if they have children.
I could speak to that as mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think kitchens are a big focus. And I actually am pretty well versed at doing kitchens and baths. Get everything off the counters. You're going to ask me all these little tricks, aren't you, Noel?
I am. Because I want to know them, and I think our listeners want to know them, because I think a lot of our listeners are people that, maybe they have considered renting out their home in the past, but they were scared to. And then the Belmont came around and it was like, well, now I have to, because there's more opportunity. And also, I think what the Belmont does is it brings in kind of like a new breed of renter. The people who come up for the Belmont, maybe they've never been to Saratoga before. So maybe this is a time, as Helen mentioned in our last podcast, to lock in a new regular renter or a new person who's just going to come back every single year or come back to Saratoga. So what are things that make people return to a home that's rented out? What are some, I think probably you were saying the unique stuff, but what are items or things in a rental home staging wise that could bring a return customer?
For me, when I'm a guest, I want something to be comfortable. I want good air. I want a wonderful view. And I know these are all things that some people may or may not have, but there are ways to create views, even if it's just using wonderful art in the house. Some people like to play on the horse, so they put a lot of horse-related things in the house.
Do you like that, or do you think that's tacky?
It's funny. My dad was a polo player. I grew up with horses, but I am not. I'm not really a track goer, but I live in a horse town, so. I don't know what to say about that. I did stage a house with beautiful, very large-scaled pastels that were done on like plywood that this woman just adored.
Oh, wow.
There were two big horse head, very abstract, over her couch. And
nice. I have toyed with the idea of renting out our home. My husband, huge car guy, doesn't want anybody in his garage, and that freaks him out. And I understand. I'm sure everybody has a room that is like that. Oh, I don't want people touching this. So that's kind of probably a huge turnoff to people who are considering renting homes, is maybe we don't want to have people mess up our stuff. What's your advice for that?
You need to remove all of your personal belongings. Nobody wants to see your family photos. No one wants to, nor do you want. That's pretty personal.
Yeah, it's
for
creepy.
me, I would always remove anything that was personal. There's always a closet that gets locked, and that's where you store all these things that you do not want anyone to see or mess with. Yes, and also the valuable things. And I don't mean jewelry. I mean something that has a huge sentimental value or significance that you would be crushed if it was broken. Things do get broken. It's usually wine glasses, and no one really cares about the wine glass. But if it's something, so all of those things need to be removed and put in a storage room. And a garage can be locked. I wouldn't want anyone even looking at a winning off. So
it's the biggest room in our house with the highest ceiling.
Is it? Wow. Well, you could redo that. Move the car. Maybe you could find a good storage. Sorry, husband.
Listening. He has a lift in there. He likes the classic cars and stuff. So
I've restored a garage as living space. The Mitchell Place house I did.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I took a garage and said, "The heck with this. We don't need garages." There's a European saying that says, "I don't know what it is about Americans who build garages for their cars."
So can you imagine Rob right now listening to
garages
this?
in Europe.
Funny.
Yeah, so the garage. So you need living space. You don't need a place to put your car. Sorry, Rob, but you couldn't.
It's so funny.
Why don't we
cars live outside, just like the horse.
No, the cars don't go out in the rain, like.
Oh, okay.
Salt,
only on a sunny Sunday. Sunday drive. It's
so
a
we
Sunday
would have
drive
to
car.
build another garage. But anyway, so that's good to know that if you are interested in doing it, but you're a little nervous, you can block off certain rooms. Are there rooms that are absolute, do not block these off because that will deter renters or?
No, I don't think so. I think as long as you've got the bedrooms that you say you have, you don't want to misrepresent yourself. That's a big no-no. I've encountered that myself, right?
Yeah.
Where you go to your wonderful place that you're excited about and realize that, oh, no, this wasn't what it looked like in the picture. So that's really important. You can't do that. That's
deceptive.
That's a no, yes.
As somebody who does design homes, do you enjoy going to Airbnbs yourself?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I find it very inspiring. Yes,
we've only done one in our lives, and we got ripped off.
Oh,
it was a horrible.
No. Okay, well, that's
in Boston.
You have
apartment.
to tip your toe in again the water. Yeah, it's also these rental sites now have, best, better. I don't know, Airbnb calls theirs something I should know, like exclusive or 101, 102. They name them, different levels.
Is it in parentheses, we're not liars?
Right.
Okay, just checking. Just checking. That's the one
you definitely do not want to misrepresent yourself.
But that's what the ratings
you'll never get a return.
Right,
yes.
right.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. My son has had that experience in Hudson, yes, where he wanted to keep his ratings, and there would be a couple of complaints, and he'd have to immediately, if there is a problem, bend over backwards. You can't, you're going to go to the house. What can I help you with? Let me fix this. I'll get someone there right away. You can't be I think being an absentee renter is a little tricky. Having the owner nearby who can tell you where to go, where to eat, where to hike, it's really invaluable.
Which brings me to another conversation that I know you feel very passionately about. Laws are changing, or in the process of changing, in Saratoga when it comes to short-term rentals. What's your take on that? Because City Council really talking about by this summer, we're going to have some regulations. What do you think about what's been put out there, and what do you think should be done?
My thoughts are going to come from my experience in other places that have already regulated things. And
it's a good place to start.
Yes. So Rhinebeck, Rhinecliff, Hudson, Martha's Vineyard right now is in the same process that we are, because what's happening, in my opinion, and I think it's wonderful to offer up unusual space to rent. But what's happening is you are finding corporations from out of town buying up properties, and it's happening within neighborhoods. And I think neighbors who lived next door to, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson who had children, or even the summer people that would leave their houses empty and come back, was better than this in and out the door. Having strangers next to them, it's becoming a problem, I think, for fraying communities. So that is why I'm not against regulation. I know regulation is a scary word in the world right now, but I think it's important. Otherwise, it could be a runaway train. And when does it stop?
Right.
Well, and I was at that
when
last
does it
city
stop?
council meeting, that
Yeah,
town
I
hall.
missed that.
A
Sorry.
lot of people seem to be for regulation. Even the people who didn't like what the town board was presenting, they were saying, we understand that something needs to be done, but not necessarily what was offered up. The fees were too high. I think it was it $1,000 to $1,000? If you're renting your home, you have to pay a fee. Whereas in Lake George, which is also a very popular home rental spot, short-term rentals, it's only $100. Why is it so steep here? So what's your take on the fees and some other things? And what's your proposal? If you were creating the rules, what do you think should be done? Because you're totally supportive of short-term rentals, but you just want some rules.
The fee's tricky, but I know this town. You can't have a fabulous, fancy town and not expect, I think the rentals here are more money than the rentals on Lake George, I would imagine, if you wanted to look at the spreadsheet on that. And Saratoga wants to be the place to be. So the fee being more than somewhere else, that doesn't, that wouldn't bother me. I think that, and the way I've seen these other towns do it successfully, is that the fees I think are maybe relative to bed tax, and I'm not sure if that's true, so I don't want to misspeak on that. And I know that in Hudson they have a bed tax that my son has to pay that tax, and they don't allow short-term rentals at all unless there's an apartment in your home or a carriage house on your property. So there's always someone in the home
with you.
So no, so you are in your home, but on your property, whether you have an apartment in the back. And I have quite a few friends that have apartments in the back of their house that have been using it as a rental, really.
Right.
But the renter
short-term.
has to be on the property.
Yes, I think that buying houses all over town by people that are living in California or Florida or wherever and renting them out. I think that's where the regulation really should come from. I think if it's your property. And it's very restricted down. I'm going to use Rhinebeck because I've looked for property down there as an investment, and I'm not allowed to buy and do that. I'm not allowed to buy unless I live there. Wow. So if I want to do an Airbnb, I have to be on the premises, and it has to have an apartment in it or a carriage house with an apartment in it. So,
and that's for short-term rentals only, or for rentals in general?
I think that's for both.
Okay.
How would that work in Saratoga, though? Because for track season, you rent your house for 4 to 6 weeks.
Gates. So now what do we do? What do we do going, forward? Because you can't.
At least those people own the house, or they're,
Well, I know quite a few people who it's their home, they own it, and they live in it year round. But they're renting out their home, and they're taking a vacation.
They're staking. Yes, that's different. That's different. I think where the problem is lying is being created is by these limited liability corporations that if you read in the money transaction page in the Saratogian, you can see half of the sales, Helen, you know this, are corporations. And those corporations are, I don't know how you restrict that.
I know there were one or two people who stood up and they said, I live in the area. I bought this as an investment property. I don't live here. This is purely an investment, but it's going to pay for my kids' college or my kids' sports. So what's your take on that?
Well, in that case, what's wrong with a long-term rental? I know that other towns have had these problems. This is not a new problem.
Long-term being what length of time versus short-term being what length of time?
By the year. And there are a lot of people back when I was renting. I had a fabulous house on Ludlow Street, and I had a barn in the back. And I had a teacher who lived there. She was the perfect tenant because she would say, "Bye, I'm going to go. I'm going to the beach for the summer," and I could rent it to the track.
But she still paid for the year.
But she still paid for the year.
Okay.
So, maybe try to be a little more creative with that. I don't know. I don't begrudge anyone to buy a house for, a rental investment property. Right. But I just think the in and out, I don't blame the neighbors for being upset.
Yeah.
I've heard too many nightmare stories about that.
Well, I think you want to know who your neighbors are, especially if you have families, that are living on the street. You have kids going up and down the block.
So, I think it's being mindful, maintaining your property, and also maybe considering doing more long-term and doing the short-term, which is what we always had. And that's why I think that we have a hard time in this town. We always had summer rentals. Well,
Right.
we can still just have summer rentals. So
You just have to be creative on
Yes.
how you write up the rules.
Yes.
And
Yeah, and I do think there should be rules.
So, Lisa, do you think we should look to other towns and see what they do and take a little step back and figure out instead of jumping right into what they've done?
I do. I think it's important, and I think it has. I've seen it change places.
we can learn from their
Yeah.
lessons and
Yes.
see what worked and what didn't work.
Yes.
You were saying there are things that you like about Rhinebeck, things that maybe you don't. And Lake Placid, Helen, you had mentioned before.
Yes, so they have new short-term rental regulations, and there's a whole host of
Applying for a permit and having
Right.
your house. Sometimes your house needs to be assessed by a code enforcer to make sure that you
Right.
meet. That's a safety.
Safety
So I
standards.
do think there needs to be, getting permits. What's wrong with getting a permit?
Belmont. Let's talk about Belmont.
Belmont.
It's the elephant
Belmont
in the room.
is, yes.
How does
Whoa.
this how does this
Belmont.
change the landscape of short-term rentals in Saratoga, and more specifically for you, Lisa, since you're going to be staging a lot of these homes? Does that change how we design some of the rental homes?
I think it's similar to the summer person. I do, and I think it probably is the summer person
So
that's
we're already
coming early.
experts.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's any difference to
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Why do we need Lisa Bates now that the rental season is picking up?
I call it editing, actually editing their homes to create a rental space. There's a lot of putting your things away, your clothes, your all those personal items. But usually the rental rush, as everybody calls it, there's a week of a bit of a nightmare the week before because you're living in your home and you don't want to do anything, especially if you have children.
Oh my gosh,
you don't
this
want
is
to tell
why I
your kids to
haven't.
sit
Yeah.
at the table and don't touch anything for a
Right.
week. You know,
Right.
it doesn't. So
So that's your busy time, is a month or two before rentals.
yes, because if it's your home that you're living in, you can't mess with it.
No.
Right.
We talked a little bit about unique touches in your home. What are some unique touches? Because when I think unique touches, I'm thinking like tchotchkes. But you also don't want to clutter. You're all about simple. So what are some unique touches you can add that bring people back every time that won't clutter your home as well?
Okay, well, I would say plant life is lovely. I wouldn't overdo the plant life. Design books or books that are about you and who you are. Sometimes people really like to come to a home and say, oh, this person likes antique cars like your husband.
Sure.
Or,
The coffee table
having
books.
coffee table books out.
So seems like simple with little
Yes.
pops, which actually is, if you're
Right,
watching,
right,
you
right.
can see Lisa aesthetic. Aesthetic is the all black
Yeah.
with like these interesting
Yeah.
glasses.
And neutrals. Neutrals are a great way to
Right, right.
start. Try to make the palette neutral so that you can add the color with art, or you can add, the color with the pillows, or maybe in the rug.
This leads me to Lisa Bates Design. Lisa Bates Design, tell us about that. What is it?
Lisa Bates Design has, I'm going to read you my quote, okay?
Okay.
And then I'll go into what it
Is your
actually is.
mantra?
But this is one of
Yay.
my mantras,
Good.
and probably my
Okay.
favorite. I truly believe beauty is found in simplicity. So the clean lines and minimalist approach to Scandinavian architecture genuinely speaks to me from wanting the same feeling at my home or office. I predominantly love to find a house that needs attention, attention, and a new face.
A makeover.
A makeover. That's my favorite thing to do. And I like to help people do that. If I get that phone call,
Yeah.
I really love doing that. And it, like I said, the hardest part of it is to tell someone that chair that was your grandmother's
love.
really doesn't
Yeah.
go in here.
Right.
anymore.
Emotional.
Yes,
Right.
it is. But and then I do have a little pop-up shop down in Hudson. I also have a warehouse here that I pick from to either sell to clients or let people borrow for rentals or for something else. Maybe they're doing a photo shoot and they need a prop.
Now it's time for our real estate horror stories. This is a new segment that we're going to be doing every week, highlighting a home buying or selling situation that has gone wrong or just kind of interesting, unique. So Lisa, tell us yours.
There have been a couple, but this one really took the cake. Sorry. It was I was always in search of alleys. There was everybody knows this building because it was there when I was at Skidmore. It was a mechanic's garage and it was used as a gas station. There was actually a gas pump in front of it. And it's on the east side.
Like
right
an old, cool gas pump? Or
like a really old, cool gas pump. Everybody knew it as Nichols Garage. So a couple had bought it. Actually, it was a single girl who graduated from Skidmore just behind me, and she made a fabulous dwelling out of it and got hooked up with some bad dudes along the way and ended up dealing drugs. It was became a meth house.
Oh,
They had 4 Newfoundlands living in the house, probably 5 cats. It smelled so badly that when I brought my friends in to say, should I buy this? They were all like, what are you?
I'm sure you get that a lot
nuts?
now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was really rough. And the neighbors were applauding me. They wanted the drug dealers out of the place. And,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, the boyfriend was a felon. It was.
Oh, yikes.
And
Did you get a good deal?
There were buried oil tanks.
Wait, did you get it?
Yes, I did end up getting it.
course you did.
Yes,
Oh, my
but it was a
God.
fight. It was a long fight. And I did end up getting a deal. There were buried oil tanks as well.
So it's a real estate horror story turned into a happy ending?
Yes,
Is it a
very
fairy
happy
tale
ending.
now?
It was my first Airbnb. I've sold it since, but when I did it, it was actually the one that caught most of the field editors' attention. So it's been in a lot of magazines for different reasons. So this is the one that I turned a garage into a living space. Just saying. It was a labor of love. I was living in the house while I was doing it, which was probably a mistake for my
Ouch.
health, but I set up a nice little corner. I kept it clean, and the guys would come in at 7 a.m. every morning and leave at 4, and we got it finished in under, I'd say a year. I didn't have to do anything structural. It was all wonderful, fun cosmetic. I took the beautiful cherry cabinets in the kitchen that someone had made and reused them, and I'm a big believer in reuse. I do not like throwing stuff in a landfill. The floors were so awful because of the animal activity in there and the meth. I ordered a floor from a John Deere tractor factory that had been ripped out and salvaged by a company in Buffalo. And
Wow,
they
that's really cool.
trucked it over, and we installed it, and my floor guy cleaned it up after many, many, many rounds of sandpaper, and he was really mad at me. But it's one of the best floors I've ever put in a house.
That's
So
special.
I had a realtor say, I have someone who might want to see it, and she came and looked and offered me money, and it was... I really wanted to say I'm not selling, but it was a very,
A real estate horror story turned fairy tale.
Yes,
Thank you so much
that's
for
right.
sharing that, Lisa. All right. And we also want to hear about your real estate horror story. Please send them in to us at sellingsaraTogaPod@gmail.com. Helen has come with a few. I have one. Usually our guest will come with some, but every once in a while we'll read anonymously, or you can share your name, up to you.
Right.
We're really excited. And I think people like hearing them. This is like,
Absolutely.
coffee talk. All right. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it was really fun, you
Yay.
You
guys.
had a lot of
Thanks for
wisdom
having
that
me.
I was really shocked to hear a lot of the information you had. I mean, I always knew you were creative and, as a designer, but I think that it's interesting to hear the perspective of a designer when you are creating a space for short-term rentals. It's important. It's what makes your home stand out.
Well, and I just want to say, as somebody who has not always used somebody, an interior stylist, you're so approachable. I think it's something that people wonder about.
Yeah, you're
What's
very
the
easy
word?
to talk to.
Very easy. Very,
Great.
Which is
very
important.
smart,
Great.
very
Thanks for
knowledgeable.
saying
But not
so.
intimidating.
Love to hear your
Love it.
stories.
So, all right.
Yay.
Well, be sure to tune in for our next episode, which will be in 2 weeks. You can always hear our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's where you can stream us. Again, this will be on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Again, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.